is my choice. And I picked a movie that no one has heard of. Apparently.
Shocker.
Well, I do that often. I don't know why.
We both do, apparently.
So, this is apparently a horror drama that you found. Or that you found out about.
Yeah, I didn't know horror drama was a thing.
I didn't either, but apparently there's a lot of things that are in that category.
Right, and we've done one before. The Quiet Place.
Really? Yeah. That's convenient. This movie is The Cured. I'm Tyler.
I'm Shay.
And this is Cinematically Correct. So, do we want to go into brief synopsis, or where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, let's go into brief synopsis. I mean, no one's really heard of this movie, so, I mean, kind of give them a lay of the land, I guess, but don't give too much details away.
Brief synopsis.
Okay, so The Cured is about a zombie outbreak in Ireland, and it has been put under control, and people have actually been cured of being zombies with a vaccine or some kind of inoculation. It lets them remember all the horrible things they've done while they were a zombie, but they're no longer a human-eating monster. The movie follows along with all the people that are being reintroduced to society, and the end of the movie, another zombie outbreak.
Yeah,
that's basically the movie.
Yeah. So before we really go into the movie, I did want to mention, which I'm sure you saw in your research, but David Frayne, I believe the name of the director is. I could be saying his name wrong, but so this is his first movie. But prior to the movie, he actually released a short called The First Wave. And it was basically a prequel to this movie, essentially.
I did not see that at all.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I wanted to talk about it real quick because so in the short, it focuses on one girl and she's in a hospital bed and she is she's tied down and she's remembering everything she did when she was a zombie, and the doctor is telling her she's the first one that's been cured. She's going to be reintroduced to society. He's trying to get her excited that she's going to go back home, and she's depressed and she keeps focusing on
PTSD
what happened
and all of the horrible things.
Yeah, and honestly, that short was really ominous and creepy, and it was really well done.
Well, a couple of points in the movie, you have things where oh, my uncle was part of the first wave, but he killed himself because he couldn't live with what he did, and people had traumatic experiences as zombies, and they committed horrible things, and now that they're back to normal, they can't cope.
Right, and I mean, they did mention in this movie that it was the third wave, so I thought it was interesting to see the first wave and hear the account of the first person and see, as she's seeing zombies walk by her door and things like that, where it's still obviously very infected. So anyways, if you haven't seen the short for that, definitely do that before you watch the movie, because I do think it gives you a little bit of context as to where it's coming from, rather than just starting right in on the third wave. So anyway, I wanted to let people know that existed in case people didn't see it.
I mean, I read an article that you sent me where the director talked about the movie's underlying theme was that you cannot give in to hate or fear.
Right.
That has very almost Nazi concentration camp feel. It had a very dark undertone of people not being accepted, whether it's immigrants or some kind of social class, or you had said something. Drug addiction. So it had a very, people are being viewed in a negative light and they're almost not people.
Right. So, so before we get into the political undertones of this movie, we should start by saying, the movie starts out with the third wave of the cured past zombies, I guess, being released, and we are introduced to the main character, who I think his name is Senan.
Senan, yes.
Which
is a really cool name, if I want to be honest.
And his name stands for?
I didn't hear that.
Very strong leader in Irish or Ireland culture. I don't know how you say that. Well, it just says in Irish culture, so I'm not really sure. But I just looked up the meaning behind it, which is weird to me because he's not actually the leader, but he is kind of the leader in the context of the film. He's the narrator. He's the one who drives the
he's the main character, but at the same time, he takes a backseat in terms of the antagonist of the movie.
Right, but I think at the end of the movie, you could say he's the leader of his personal pack, I guess.
I would say that's probably fair.
Yeah. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I just wanted to mention it when I said his name. But anyway, so we follow him and see him going to his sister-in-law's house to be assimilated back into society. We learn that his brother has passed away as one of the victims of the zombie apocalypse. And we also see that he has a friend from zombieing together, I guess is how they put it at the beginning.
I had written down in my notes, zombie buddy.
Yeah. Which is weird, but whatever. So that's kind of how you start out. And basically, at the beginning, you're really kind of thrown into the idea that there are people who have never been infected who hate the idea of people who have been infected coming back into society.
Right.
For a bunch of reasons. One, for what they've done in the past, and also for the fear of being reinfected.
Infection and the bad times coming back.
Right. And to understand, just to clarify, if the way the movie put it is if the person has been cured, there is no chance that they will become a zombie again. And they also are not affected by other zombies. The other zombies almost recognize that they have the virus in them, and they calm down and treat them as one of them.
And I thought I heard at some point the doctor saying that they have no chance of reinfecting other people as well.
So it's completely eradicated from them, but they do hold a part of the virus in them, I guess the immunity part of it, I guess.
Right.
So the other people who dislike them because they're afraid, not because of reality.
Right. So it's I would say similar to the AIDS epidemic, the start of the AIDS problem, where people didn't understand that it was not something that you were just going to get by talking to a person or shaking their hand or all of that stuff. And a very negative stigma, even though there's no reason to be. It was more fear and ignorance than anything. It was just, I don't know, so I'm going to be scared.
Right. And I feel like that speaks to a lot of different issues in culture now.
Well, it's easier to be scared than to be informed and actually try to learn about what's going on.
Right. And when you breed fear, then that mob mentality that you see in the movie really is exaggerated.
Yeah. And fear propagates fear, and it just builds and builds and builds till it's an unstoppable force sometimes.
And the director did mention that it is a social commentary.
Right.
Based on things that were happening. I'm sure you're going to get into that later, but I just want to mention that this is deeper than just a zombie movie. It's definitely... You can kind of take from it what you want to, because it does speak to a lot of different issues depending on what your viewpoint is. Because we obviously came at it from different angles, but it meant similar things, just in different concepts.
Right. It was an interesting thing where it's on a different spectrum than the normal zombie movie. Even 28 Days Later, Train to Busan that we did on the podcast, it had a very different feel. Because it was approaching it from a very interesting and unique perspective, which I did really like about this movie. I just wish they had carried it through a little bit more.
Right. Now, since you're saying it's interesting and unique, there was, I saw, apparently, a BBC show called In the Flesh that a lot of people are comparing it to. I've never obviously seen this show. I do really enjoy BBC shows, so I'm wondering if it's on Netflix. But... apparently, it was a few seasons long, and it was about people who have been cured from the zombie apocalypse being assimilated back into society.
Well, now I'm going to have to watch this, because we're obsessed with zombie shows recently.
Right, and we just finished Santa Clarita Diet, but people were saying that In the Flesh actually did a better job of this. So, granted, I'm not making that opinion, because I've never seen In the Flesh, but it's an interesting... thing to think about, because I have not seen any other movie make this kind of,
Well, it was an odd approach, because there was a new angle. Every so often in the zombie genre, you get something new that is interesting. Like 28 Days Later, Fast Zombies was revolutionary. It was a complete 180 from the normal shambling, slow zombie.
Right.
This is another new take on it, which is an interesting thing. Different perspectives and different ways to approach it. Even though you're talking about zombies, it just makes it more enjoyable to me personally.
No, I agree.
I'm all about zombie movies. I watch almost all of them.
I think I've watched most of them as well, actually. Yeah. But anyway.
I don't know where to pivot from.
Okay, so, I mean, for one thing, I do want to talk about the main kind of characters. So, we talked about Sinan a little bit, or Sinan, whatever.
Senan.
However, let's talk about Ellen Page.
Okay.
Well, I don't remember what her name is in the movie, unfortunately.
I don't either.
Yeah, it makes us look terrible. We're a terrible
It's Ellen Page.
Yeah. She is the sister-in-law, and so she's an interesting character to me because at the beginning of the movie, she is very understanding, and everyone's kind of like, why are you taking an infected in? Like, they're kind of like, they admire her for being strong, but they're also like, yeah, you shouldn't do that. That's just
You have a young kid in the house. You got to think about yourself first. You got to, you're being a bad mother.
Right. And now at the beginning of the movie, they really played to the fact that she's a reporter.
Right.
And I really thought they were going to do something with that. Like, I thought she was going to, like, leak something big or, like...
Well, she did go into the zombie anonymous meeting.
Right, but she never did anything with it. And
well,
that
it was stolen from her. Like, she was going to do something with it, but...
That was one part of her character I wish had done more.
Got fleshed out a little bit more.
That was something I saw in the trailer that I was like, oh, that would be really interesting to see, like, what a reporter would do with this. Because normally you get, like, the different perspectives of a story, but, like... What's a zombie's perspective? Like, I don't know. So
can I just say that we were saved from her trying to stumble through an Irish accent? Thank God.
Yeah, I know. That was one of the things you said.
I was like, how are they going to do that? Oh, she's an American and living in Ireland. That's a cop-out, but thank God, because it would have been an atrocity probably, because Irish accents are probably the hardest thing ever.
Also, we should note she's Canadian.
Yeah, she is Canadian, so she's not even American, so it's I mean, she speaks English, but...
Canadians usually speak English. Yes, there is French Canadian, but...
Well, right. It's a different style of speaking than the normal American accent.
Right. Anyway, so they did that. Also, she was very almost open to talking to even his friend, Connor, the other infected.
Right.
When he was being awfully weird.
Kind of creepy.
Creepy.
Very creepy.
But she was still being really good. But then, I guess, spoiler alert, even though you guys know we spoil every movie, we find out from Connor, Connor tells Ellen Page that Senan killed his brother when he was a zombie.
Right.
Now, we also learned that Connor...
Infected Senan
and also...
I'm
gonna say mind-controlled Senan to do it. That's the vibe I got.
Well, it was kind of like a wolf pack alpha male mentality where one zombie is the leader of a group of them.
Right.
And he happened to be the leader of his particular group of zombies. We find out that he is very charismatic in a horrible way. Kind of like Hitler. I mean, it's the whole I can convince people to do horrible things type deal. Right. Connor, not Senan. Connor.
I want to get more into that when we get on to Connor because I have some questions and thoughts and whatever. But anyway, we find that out, and Ellen Page basically is like, get out of my house. I don't want to talk to you, to Senan. And, like, you know, basically it doesn't want anything to do with him.
Well, she shuts down because she thought she was going to be able to cope with that if she had found out that somebody that she knew or someone in her life had killed her husband. But to say that and to actually be able to do it are two things.
Right.
Two completely different things.
I think forgiveness is a theme in this movie a bit. For one, Senan having to forgive Connor as well as forgive the, what do you want to call it? The guards who were beating him and things like that.
Right.
Because he had to go back to them in the end. I mean, he had to do that. And she had to end up forgiving Senan because he was her only hope to save her son.
Right.
And I think that it speaks to, like, the fact that we all do that. We shut down and we, you know, have a habit of when we get angry, we don't want to accept, but that's only going to hurt us in the long run. If she hadn't forgiven him and she kept him shut out, her son would have died. Right.
It's one of those things where it also, forgiving someone takes time. It's not something that's going to happen right away.
But in this case, sometimes you don't have time.
You don't have a whole lot of time, but there was still a little bit of time from that, and it was expedient to have her son being rescued.
Right.
So the greater good of her son being brought back to her is more important than being very, very angry with a person for what they did when they were not in control of themselves.
Right. I agree with that. Okay, so Connor. So he was basically the leader of the zombie pack, I guess you can say. And he's still really creepy now that they're not zombies. He obviously is still very much a leader of the cured zombies of that pack.
Also very, very entitled.
Very entitled. He was obviously a past politician or politician's son. I'm not exactly sure.
He was a barrister, which is lawyer. And then he was running for office.
Okay. So he obviously came from a well-off family.
Very well connected.
There's a comment about daddy didn't give you
right.
a job or something. So anyway, my question with him though is, did he have some kind of control over them still when they were cured? Because there were parts of the movie where like people would attack and it looked like he like nodded at them and had them go. And I'm curious, was that a mind control thing, or was that...
That I don't know. They didn't really go into that a lot in the movie, but it did seem like he was at sometimes directing some of the new zombies around, even though he's back to presumably normal, because he's been cured. And he's definitely not normal, because he does not have any problem with any of the things that he's done.
Right.
We find out that he didn't have nightmares, and he wasn't traumatized. So he must be a sociopath, clearly.
Right. I would agree with that. He seemed like he actually wanted to be a zombie still.
Like, it seems like he wanted to go back to those times because it was a lot... I have the excuse to be bad. I have an excuse to not have to control my actions.
Right. So then it makes you wonder that in a zombie apocalypse, if that were ever to happen, would the sociopaths of the world, the serial killers and all of those people, would they be the dominant people because they don't have guilt and they don't have feelings competing, that they would give in much easier? Because he said something about how you're fighting against yourself when you're a zombie and then eventually you decide to give in. But if you're a sociopath, you would just give in. There would be no resistance. So would they become the alphas?
Well, so I read a theory that part of human history is dependent on sociopaths, which is why they still occur, because they are the take charge leader, we're going to do what needs to be done, even if it's horrible, mentality.
Right.
And they were, at points in history, the driving force to get things done.
Right.
Because
but I don't think I would want that to be the case in a zombie apocalypse. Because
no, it would be horrible.
Right.
I mean, it's like Negan from Walking Dead, where he just is a monster.
I hated that man, but yes, okay. So anyway, that's really what I want to talk about with the characters. Do you have your history minute?
I do have a history minute.
Okay.
Tyler's History Minute.
More of a history quote. So this movie struck me very much like a internment or concentration camp feel for a lot of it. And it reminded me of the Nazis. And I just was struck by one of the quotes, which was... first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And just hit me. It was very much when the zombies were talking, or the ex-zombies were talking about things where they were very concerned about the dangerous slope of killing off the non-cured people.
Right, because they were afraid that then they would be next.
Right, and it is one of those things that's understandable because that has happened historically, where it's you round up all of one set of people and then you finish off that section and you move on to the next and you go down the list, and it's
right, but both sides at that point are working on fear.
Right.
Like the healthy are afraid that the cured will infect them, and the cured are afraid that the healthy will kill them.
Exactly. And it's that horrible dynamic where it's us versus them. I have to protect myself versus I have to do whatever it takes. And even if you're doing it with good intentions, it leads to a horrible thing.
Right.
And that's my history minute. I believe it was a priest or someone came out with that, and he was very vocal about opposing the Nazis because he had that quote where it's like, well, if I don't speak up now, I'm screwed at some point.
Agree with that. You didn't, go into anything about the history of what Ireland was going through at the time of the
movie being shot. It was a little bit of a depression, but it's back on track. They've gone back in the right direction. The world economy is doing fairly well, all things considered.
But the director did actually make a direct comment about how America's culture currently is a result of things that were happening back then.
Right. I mean, there is a whole fear across the world and in America where it's the fear of the unknown or the fear of other people for right or wrong, and it leads to poor decisions across the board.
I agree with that.
Like a stupid wall.
Okay, we're going to ignore the fact that you just brought up politics because we don't talk about politics.
This is a political movie.
It is, but
it's
anyway.
a political allegory to the misery that we're in right now.
Okay. Anyway, so one of the other things that pops up in this movie is the idea of PTSD.
Yes.
So when we saw it, we said that it reminded us of soldiers coming home from war. And
yes.
The director, I'm sure you read because I sent you the article, but mentioned that he was reading the book Greatest Generation.
Yes.
And apparently it was a book that gave him insight onto the PTSD aspect of things. And I did find it really interesting how different people dealt differently because in a lot of these types of movies when they show PTSD it's always like a very similar thing, like maybe they have dreams or maybe they have whatever, but
it's very typecast at this point where it's each person behaves in the same way to similar circumstances and sometimes completely different circumstances that have traumatized them. You have to understand that it's not that way. It's people deal with things how they deal with things.
Right. And I mean, I really appreciated how he showed that and showed the difference and showed how important it is to have support groups and all of that kind of stuff for people like that. So I did think that was interesting. But I mean, beyond that, I have other zombie related things to talk about, but I don't have direct things about the movie. So I know we want to talk about the ending, but other than that.
I have one thing. You remember that scene where Connor, who needs to die, stabbed the guy with a beer bottle?
Yes.
On the rooftop?
Yes.
That is very close to what all like self-defense people tell you, is that if you're not distanced by about 21 feet, a knife is better than a gun.
Well, absolutely.
Because you can close the distance before the person can react, and then you win. And
you just felt like saying that. You just want to announce.
Well, there's videos of it out there, but it's a terrifying thing that you have less distance than you think you do, and you need more space.
There was something similar shown on Mythbusters about that.
Right. It's just one of those things where it's you need space, otherwise you don't have the reaction time. You just don't.
Right.
And I found that interesting. I think that's it. So zombie-related things.
Okay, well, we will get to the ending of the movie, but I wanted to ask you. So, first of all, do you even think a zombie apocalypse is possible?
In the United States?
In general?
No, not really.
Why?
I mean, so zombies rely on people for eating and for population growth, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Everyone in the world has seen a zombie movie at this point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, oh my god, that person's chewing on someone's face. I need a bat to hit them in the head. This first thing you think of.
Okay.
So, it would become very difficult to get to a critical mass of zombies before people have realized, oh my god, they're zombies. We need to kill them all by bashing in their heads. So,
I found that on Forbes.com, a team of students at the University of Leicester, figured out that the chance of a survival of a zombie apocalypse in the scenario that you just described, where people are aware and they know what to do, okay, is 0.0088, and that is your best case scenario. The reasons that they gave for that is, one, major cities. If it starts in New York, if it starts in California, Beijing. Anything like that. Well, I'm talking about the U.S. just because that's what I know very well. But in those situations, your response time doesn't matter. There is too many people that it wouldn't, like, you could notice, but the zombies already bit 4 other people before you've got a chance to kill them. There's too many people packed into a small area. If it started out in, like, the Rockies or things like that.
To be fair, if everyone is aware, I'm not the only one that's killing zombies. Everyone else can step in and kill zombies, including...
There's a difference between aware and prepared.
Okay.
So, you might be very aware that it's happening, but do you have the means to kill them right now? In this room at this moment? If 5 zombies rush into this room, no, you don't, because that would not work. That would break.
There's probably 3 or 4 knives in this room right now
that you could get to if they rushed in right now.
No, it would be very difficult.
Well, that's my point. So in a situation where you're in a very large city and all of a sudden an outbreak happens, it's going to spread. Now, granted, as it moves out, you're going to have more and more of a chance to combat it, but it's still going to spread so quickly.
Well, it's in very high dense population urban settings, sure, but if you're in a zombie apocalypse, your first priority is to get out of the city.
Right, get to the hills. That's what the scientists say.
Get out of the city. Get to the woods. Get to anywhere not the city.
Right. Now, I did show you my depressing thing that I found on Zombiepedia, which, it's got to be legit because it's called Zombiepedia. So
okay, it's the vaccines wouldn't work because...
Right. So basically, a cure would not be possible in reality because organs decay, and there has been no proof that there is anything that could regenerate decayed organs.
See, I would argue that is the classic definition of a zombie that is an undead person that is animated. In the case of this movie, where it's more like an infected person, but they're still a living person, a vaccine is more reasonable. So, in the traditional zombie theme, yes, because they're an undead person, but they're actually dead. In the case of it's an infected person that's alive, then no.
Right. So, it does definitely depend.
Also, infected person is easier to kill because you don't have to bash them in the head. You just have to shoot them.
Well, either way, you could shoot them as long as you shoot them in the brain.
Well, no, you don't have to shoot them in the brain if they're just an infected person. If you kill them, because the person that got shot, the zombie that got shot in the chest died.
Right.
In this movie, which is not a traditional zombie death, but I feel like that makes it easier to control the zombie outbreak.
Right, that's true. I will give you that. And then lastly, did you know that our government has actually put into place protocols as to what would happen if a zombie apocalypse were to happen?
What are those protocols? Do we know?
Well, the CDC, if you go on the CDC's website, they have a emergency, like what you should do in the case of a zombie apocalypse. There's a whole
I did see
emergency
that. I thought they were doing that because a zombie apocalypse is the case. There's very similar guidelines for any kind of epidemic outbreak where it's stay inside, away from people.
Right.
Store food and water and
right, don't illicit contacts, things like that. Yeah. Yes.
So it's all just good general emergency preparedness, not just for the zombie apocalypse.
Right.
Do they have any things zombie specific?
Well, so they are all zombie specific. There's literally a zombie apocalypse page on the CDC's website. They even have shirts.
Okay.
But then the U.S. government, the Pentagon, has something called Con Plan 8888, and that is what you would do in the case of a zombie apocalypse, and it also covers the legality of killing zombies if you need to, like all of those things.
So is it legal to kill zombies?
Apparently, if you have to, then it is legal, but I'll just scroll a little bit. It's a little long, so I'm not going to read all of it.
Holy God.
Yeah. So
our tax dollars at work.
There's a nice zombie picture, though.
I mean, I'm actually okay with our tax dollars being used to prevent the zombie apocalypse.
Well, so the reason...
At least they're doing something.
From what I can see on, like, the websites and stuff, it was created as a training mechanism.
Right.
To help, how to learn preparedness for other things.
Exactly.
And this was a hype thing, so...
Right.
But, at the same time, they did also take into account that, you never know what could happen. So, I thought it was interesting that there's actually a plan out there in case...
Now, if there was a vaccine available for the zombie apocalypse, would you take it? Or would you keep it on you?
Well, we discussed this already.
Yes, we discussed it, not on the podcast, but we talked about it beforehand. Okay,
so, I mean, basically what you had said to me is if the zombie apocalypse happened and the chance of survival, the chance of being able to be cured if you were a zombie was 75% and you were in the middle of an outbreak, would you allow yourself to be infected and then cure yourself, and take the chance because it's only 75%, or would you wait it out and kind of fight for your life and see what you could do? So what we came to as a conclusion, well, I decided really.
You came up with the best solution, as normal.
Well, yeah. So the decision I came up with was I would continue to fight it out and keep the vaccine on me as like an EpiPen, is what I said.
Really the right answer.
Right. Because my opinion is I'm not a gambling person, first of all. And the chances of me being the 4 out of 3 out of 4 is very high. I mean, I'm just...
If I didn't have bad luck, I'd have no luck at all.
Right. I mean, things always go wrong in my life, so I feel like...
Yeah, we're both that way. Like,
the
that's
wrong
solidly
choice.
our life.
Right. So I feel like it's the wrong choice. But I also feel like you would have to find somebody to do that to you. Now, remember, they remember. So you better hope it's somebody that's not going to feel bad about it later, especially if you die. Because now you've got that guilt on you. But then also, if I can use it as an EpiPen, I might as well just use it as an EpiPen. I do have that time.
I mean,
so
that is fair. I mean, why wouldn't you just do it that way? That just makes all the sense in the world.
Right. So that's that.
All right. I think that just about wraps it up. Anything else you want to talk about before we get to the ending of this movie?
No. I will mention that we did release Audience Asks.
Audience Asks.
And literally no one has seen this movie. We've gotten GIFs and memes, and one person did say...
The internet has failed us yet again.
Right.
And
one person did say, why did it suck so bad? So to that person, I think that maybe you were looking at this as a just zombie movie and not looking at the social commentary. Because I will admit, it was slow at parts. A lot of parts. And if you didn't look at the social commentary aspect of it, I do think that it failed in a lot of ways. And we're going to get to the big way in a minute.
Right.
So there's that.
I think that is fair. I mean, it, to me, was slow a little bit, but it was very well done in terms of building to the end.
Right.
And then the end.
Right.
The god-awful end.
Okay. So before we get into the end, I did want to put a promo out there because we missed this last week and we meant to. But this is a podcast that I have been listening to recently, so I just wanted to give them a quick shout out. And yep, here we go.
Hi, we're the Grave Girls from Grave Girls Podcast. I'm your host, Hawthorne.
And I'm Amaryllis. Every week we watch a different horror film, and I find a scary story that goes with it that will definitely leave you shaking in your boots.
And if you aren't wearing boots, my true crime case and murder will scare the pants off you.
And then you'll just be naked, and that's just a fun time.
So listen to us on SoundCloud and iTunes.
And follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Don't forget to check out our website at grave-girls.com.
We love you all in case we die.
Bye!
Okay. So now that we've done all of the things, and sorry again that we don't have audio clips this week, I don't even know what we would ask. Like a person who prepares for apocalypses, I don't even know what we would ask.
No,
so
there was no...
there were no clips.
There were no clips to get.
Right. So, sorry about that. But the ending. So, I want to say off the bat, I hated the ending.
Well, it wasn't an ending. It was the middle part of a movie that didn't continue. Right. It wasn't an ending. It was just left in
right.
the end.
Now, I did find a blog that tried to explain the ending and basically said that Senan left a map behind for Ellen Page to find, and she found it, and it showed where he was bringing Killian, and it showed that he was in the safe zone. So when she found it, that's why she was so happy, was because he was in the safe zone, and he had left it for her to find. So now she was able to go to safety and not have to worry about her son.
But in what time? He took the child and ran. There was no time to write out a map and then leave it anywhere. That makes no sense.
I don't know, but that was what his like thing was. Somebody else in the comment section, because I was like trying to figure this out, said that he believes that she was tracking on the map all the infected areas of the world,
right,
and tracking where she thought he probably would have gone based on the way in which he went and things like that.
That makes way more sense.
Right. And so when she found heard on the news that there was like cured,
pocket of-
like a pocket of people or whatever,
infected people.
right? She realized, oh, it's not where he is. He's in a safe area because of what she had mapped on her own which made more sense to me, because as a mother, I can see scouring every news article, every whatever, to make sure your child is okay. That makes sense to me. But they could have done so much more. Like I want to know.
5-minute. Oh, he's better now.
Right.
And
I want to know what happened to the kid. I want to know if she made it to safety, because we don't know.
Connor's still out there. He didn't
Right,
get the pipe. He didn't get the pipe in the face that he deserved.
Right. Does Connor die? What happens to all the people that were cured? Are they gonna now be a different pack if Connor's not around? Does Connor rile up and take them? What happens to the rest of the infected people? Are they going to be taken out humanely like they stated before? Like, I have so many questions. Like,
it ended without an ending.
Right. Now, does that mean that there's going to be another movie? Because there's no talks of that online. I've looked everywhere. Now, granted, I don't think this movie did wonderfully.
It did all right. It
did win an award, I think.
But it was
it was in like a Canadian film festival, I want to believe.
Well, it was a budget of $4 million and it made $20 million US, so it did make a profit. So
yeah, so that's not bad. I don't think it was released in theaters. I don't remember that.
I don't think it was, which is why no one has seen it.
Right. So if you guys haven't seen it, we found it on Amazon Prime, I believe.
Yes, we did have to buy it on Amazon Prime.
Right. So, I mean, I definitely recommend watching it. It's definitely a different take, and it's very interesting to see.
It also just it just sparks an interesting conversation, I feel. Like it's one of those movies where it's a zombie movie with subtext.
Right.
It's not just a zombie people get eaten movie.
Right. And I'm all about the subtext.
Underlying themes and messages.
Right.
So I think that just about wraps it up.
Yeah. Now
Ratings?
we're over time, which I don't even know how, because we didn't have any of our normal segments, but sure.
We had all of the segments. History Minute, Audience Asks. We didn't do the Audience Asks, but we said it, so that counts. We did the brief synopsis, promo. Like, what else did we miss?
Okay. Anyways, ratings.
Reviews.
So, do you want me to start?
Sure.
I would probably give this a 6.5, 7, somewhere around there. I didn't dislike this movie in any way, but for one, it was a little bit slow for me, and without an ending, I just feel like the story is incomplete. You can't give it a full rating because I don't know the full story.
Right. If it had an ending, I'd have given it an 8.5, 9.
Me too.
If without the ending, I have to give it like a 7.25, 7.5.
Okay.
Like it's right in there. It's just it's
good,
it's
and it starts a good conversation.
It has an interesting story behind it. They flubbed the ending.
Right.
Like there's no other explanation other than they didn't do a good ending.
Right. So I definitely recommend you guys watch it. Shoot us a tweet after you've seen it. I would love to be able to talk to somebody else who's seen it, because right now
it's us.
We're patient zero, so just curious.
Great reference, by the way.
You're welcome. So next week's movie.
Yes, is your movie.
Right, it's my movie, and we're doing Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Excellent.
Movie I haven't seen.
Me neither.
And I've been told it's hilarious, and it's on like a lot of top lists and things like that. And I feel like a lot of you guys have got to have seen it. It's a very popular movie.
It's a very popular movie. It's an older movie, so you've had time to see it by this point.
Right.
We've never seen it,
right.
So
I'm hoping that this is a movie you guys have seen, so we can have a good conversation with you. Because I feel horrible that we pick a lot of movies you haven't seen.
You just need to watch more movies is really the answer.
Well, I hope that we do inspire you to actually watch the movies that we've seen, either to listen to the podcast with us or afterwards to find out what we were talking about. But anyway, so I hope this movie is something that we can, all discuss together. So Planes, Trains, and Automobiles will be next week. And then it's back to Tyler's choices, so I'm sorry.
Whoa.
Yes. So I wanted to say thank you to Jake at Athos Music for our intro and outro music, and let you guys know that you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CinematicallyC and Facebook at Cinematically Correct's Listener Group, and you can email us at cinematicallycorrect@gmail.com.